Well, welcome. We're glad to be with you together. I'm here with Heather Blass. Heather and I serve on the same team right here in the local church in Modesto, California. And so we're excited to be together. We're going to have a discussion about what is really significant, and that is a Supreme Court decision from 12 days ago regarding abortion. We're going to interact with the significance of the cases that were overruled. We're going to share a story of how the issue of abortion has impacted our lives. We're going to look at the significance of this decision moving forward, but also encouragement for the church, how we can think and how we can act for Christ in love, in grace, to really engage with our culture. So, Heather, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to be together.
Inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good to be together, and thank you for being with us also. All right, so I'm going to start in this way. I'm going to go to the syllabus from the Supreme Court, the core statement. I'm going to read the first half of it, and let's dig in. It says, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled. Interact with that a bit.
Well, it's where we have to go. What our country is governed by the Constitution. That is how our country is standing. And clearly, there was a group of people that made a ruling that, I don't know what the pressures were, but we made this ruling that this was okay, and it's not. It's not in our Constitution. And so it isn't actually making a judgment call on whether abortion is right or wrong. It's just saying it's not in the Constitution. It's not a right guaranteed by our founding fathers, and deferring that right somewhere else.
Yeah. So there's another statement I'll share with you. It really addresses what you just brought up. It talks a little bit later in the syllabus of this Supreme Court. They address what took place in the previous Supreme Court, and it says, the nature of the court's error, like the infamous decision in Plessy versus Ferguson, Roe was also egregiously wrong and on a collision course with the Constitution from the day it was decided. So this Supreme Court now, as of 12 days ago, really reflects on the Supreme Court from before, and says the decision they made was going to collide with the Constitution. There was going to be a wreck at some point, and now we're at that place.
Yeah, and I appreciate that we're in a country that is always trying to fine tune, right? We have all the checks and balances. I was a poli-sci major, so I do love all that. And we have the checks and balances and all these ways to keep us corrected, because we know that we are governed by people, and people make mistakes. And so there's all these things, and we're always trying to make sure we're aligned with our initial document that continues to work so far. Praise the Lord.
So about the issue of abortion, how has it impacted your life? Share from your own story about this issue, your life, your ministry.
Well, I mean, I'm 41, so my entire life, abortion's been around and approved and, championed by people. And so I don't really know anything different. And honestly, I'm like, me of little faith, I never thought it would be overturned. And when people were talking about the Supreme Court and getting justices, I'm like, it's never going to get overturned. Like, the public would, it would be outcry. And that's how little faith I have. So just being real about that. But it's just always been allowed. And so now that doesn't mean I thought it was right. It's just always been something that's been. So you go, well, I'm a Christian and I have these values, but my country doesn't necessarily align with our values, right? So, but I mean, I know people who've had abortions, and it's horrible. Like it's this spiritual deceiving that I think our generation, and our generation, I don't mean like our generation, but this time of people, when we look at it through the spiritual lens, we're a generation that has been deceived, that whether it's because I think I can't afford it, or it's just too big and scary, or there's shame in this thing. I'm now pregnant, and there's shame there. And so I can just take care of it and no one will know, or my financial problems won't be a financial problem anymore. Whatever it is, it's this deceiving, a spiritual deceiving that this will fix it. And it might momentarily take care of the problem, but it doesn't fix anything. And we know that in some friends who I know who've had abortions, and decades go by and they're still traumatized by this thing that has happened, that they've done, and clearly nothing was fixed. And the things that the devil goes, well, just hide it, right? You just hide your stuff and then no one will know and everything's fine. But that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work in our souls, in that place where we have peace. And you might think you can for a moment or time, but ultimately you can't, right? Like, it's that constant spiritual unsettling. Really, whether you're a Christian or not, this happens to you. And it's just really sad. It's really tragic and sad that this time of people, and abortion's been happening before 1973. They were happening for a lot longer, but it's so sad that there's this time that's been this deceiving, that this is the answer. And this means I have liberty. This means I have women's freedom, that I can do this. And then in the end, the women are just locked in chains, that it's a lie, And so when we enter into this agreement with the devil, whether you realize it or not, you're put in chains.
You brought up so many really good thoughts here. The whole thought about deceit, and the enemy wants to use deceit, use lying, use hiding, use secrecy to really keep people in the dark, and to have people feel like the darkness is the solution and the darkness is the answer. You brought up also the issue of when someone finds out that they're pregnant, the issue of seeing, here's all the obstacles. Here's all the reasons why this isn't going to work. And yet to know that, well, God has allowed for a life to be created, and that's a child in the womb. That is a child that's been made by God, crafted by God. He's the master craftsman and has created a wonderful child. And to know there's a purpose and there's a plan. And there's going to be hard things in the way. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be things to overcome. And you also just brought up how, just the issue of, again, coming back to the secrecy, the importance of coming into the light.
Yeah.
And having the truth of the Word of God come into our hearts, teach our minds, to instruct us on what is the truth, to be kind and loving and gracious, but to welcome people into the light. To not be hiding anymore. So
I think, like, the idea that this lie, right? We don't, and so it as technology has grown and women are able to actually see, because you're told, oh, well, it's just these cells, it's just this clump of stuff, and it's not even a baby, so you're fine. And so, okay, we can dehumanize it, and so it doesn't feel like you're killing somebody. And as technology has grown, then when women actually see those ultrasounds and actually see, oh my gosh, it's a baby, when they were told it wasn't, because that's a lie, it dehumanizes this act that is really killing a person. And as a woman, it's like, well, you are supposed to have freedom of your own choices, and it's your body and what this pregnancy is going to do to your body. And like, yeah, I mean, I know. I've been pregnant, and so yeah, it ruined my body. But beautiful though, right? Like the privilege of being able to bringing life into the world is so worth it. But anyway, my point is, I do have the right to make medical decisions over my own body, absolutely. But the body that I am going to remove from my body is someone else's body. So I don't have the right to kill another, and that is what is happening. And as long as we can push that aside, then it makes it really easy to say no, but it's a pregnancy, which dehumanizes what's happening, that it's a person who's growing. And I lost my train. But this, when it's I want to end the pregnancy, well, you're ending a life. And I don't have the right to take another life. And that's the difference. And that doesn't mean I don't have women's freedom and women's liberty. And that's the lie. And so when we can, and what's sad is it's this lie of in the rights for women, and that, if you're against abortion, you want to take away women's rights. Well, actually, again, that's a lie, and you're actually killing some babies who are also women anyway. But what's happening is you're getting women to commit these abortions, which puts them into chains, which is the opposite of liberty. It's really sad. It's just super, super sad because it's a lie. And so instead, how can we come alongside? Because you hear women say, too, like, well, I can't, because it's like, well, how about adoption, right? Like, I give if you can't raise a child, and that is the case for many people, sure. There are so many families that are desperate for a baby, and they would love to have your baby. But then I hear, well, it's too hard to give away my baby. So I'd rather just have an abortion. And you can only do that because you're dehumanizing what's happening in an abortion. Because you certainly wouldn't have that baby and then kill it. And I feel like that's so harsh, but it's the truth, right? And that is what's happening just a few months earlier. And so when we can be honest about what's really happening, then we have better information to really help and guide our women into making good choices and then supporting them.
Great, thank you. Let's look at the second half of this statement. It says, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And really significance from 12 days ago. Okay, now there's a new day. There's a new Supreme Court ruling. What do you think is the significance of this, that the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives?
Well, that's how our country was set up, is that it's not to be the king in a faraway land ruling over all the people who are very, very far away, right? That's how our country was made, that it would be local control, and that we are the United States. And so that we are all these different states, and we know our states all have different cultures and different, perspectives, and so that the states would rule themselves, but we are united together. There's been a lot more federalism over the last bunch of years, but they're saying, no, the states have that right. And so those decisions can be made by people who are, ideally or essentially like-minded in those smaller areas. And again, this is where I'm so small-minded and lack of faith, and I apparently not very well informed. And I was like, okay, well, that won't change anything. And I didn't realize 13 states had trigger laws, so ready to say, yeah, we're banning or limiting abortion immediately. I was like, wow, I had no idea. And so that's amazing, and obviously as believers in California, we're on a very different path. And so we still have a lot of work to do, people to love.
That's right, to be salt, to be light, to be ambassadors for Christ, to represent God's word, his truth, to welcome people into that truth, to be gracious, loving, kind, to be an environment to where people can come and talk about a hard decision that they made that was a wrong decision, and to find grace and community and to find healing, and to also be a group of people who can help those who are making the choice to have their baby.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit to the church about what would your encouragement to the church be, how we should move forward?
Yeah. I think it's hard because we definitely want to encourage people to live holy lives, right? And to live righteously. And I'm raising my daughters to make good choices every day. But when we don't, and I'll say when we don't, because we don't. That's right. It's not if we won't. Everyone makes mistakes. And so when we don't, there's a lot of reasons why women would have an abortion, but to just thinking of the Christian young woman who has an abortion because she doesn't want anyone to know that she made a mistake. That's so tragic, church. Oh, it makes me cry. Like, that's on us to love people well in their mistake so that that wouldn't be the reason that she wants to do this. And then subject herself to this, like I said, these chains for her life. And so, yes, we want to uphold holiness and righteous living and making good choices, undoubtedly. But when people make mistakes, can we be a soft place for them to land and put down the judgment and love people through it so that that isn't the reason that someone makes that choice? Jesus said he loves people in this moment of where there's sin. He loved them. Now go and sin no more. Obviously, like, okay, let's help, and let's make good choices every day and continuing forward. But Jesus didn't throw the stone when he could have, right? And so, like, we can't throw those stones either. I can't. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can't. We can't throw the stones.
Well, just to be the thought that if, not if, but when someone sins,
Right.
I'll call it sin instead of the word mistake, but when someone sins, is the church a place where someone who sins can come and get help so that sins are not compounded to become greater? Sin on top of sin on top of sin because of hiding or embarrassment, but for the church to be a place for someone who sins to come and to get help.
Yes.
You've mentioned something over and over. I want to come back to it and kind of close with this thought, but the importance of recognizing that it is a life in the womb. It is a baby. It is a human life in the womb, a little boy or a little girl. And so I want to share from Psalm 139. It says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret. Intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." It's a life.
Absolutely.
It's a life. It's a life that's been made by God, created in the image of God. A little male, a little female, made in his image, crafted by God, woven together. So thanks for highlighting that.
Well, and as you know, I've had 3 daughters. I have 3 daughters, and their little personalities, like when I was pregnant and carrying them, I could tell, like my last one never stopped moving, ever. And I could feel her moving all the time. I never had that moment where we're like, oh, she hasn't moved in a while. I wonder if everything's okay. And you kind of poke them to make sure they're okay. She never stopped moving. And you know what? She still doesn't stop moving. And you can't share a bed with her because she doesn't stop moving all night. And so it's just amazing, like they don't come out and then become who they are. They are who they are from when they're created. And there's some characteristics you can tell when you're carrying them. And just to reaffirm that, like they are people from the beginning, and they already have their DNA and their personality, and God has writ that on them already. And I experienced that as a mom, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, with that, we're going to end with that because that's a great thought right there. Thanks for being a mom, and thanks for sharing about being a mom. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for discussing this together. And thank you for joining us. We're going to continue to equip the church to discuss, to talk about how to think and live in the love of Christ in the midst of the culture that we're in. So we'll see you again soon. Thanks for being with us.